Good morning, everybody. You couldn't slap the smile off my face. We got a real treat for you today. We have somebody that I've just been a huge fan of forever and have unfortunately never had the privilege of actually sitting down with and talking to. We've got the amazing Jessica Piper with us today. So let's not waste any time. Fill your cups, grab your pen and paper for the round table. Let's do this. Good morning. It is a pleasure to see you. I am telling you, I have followed you for a very, very long time. Huge fan of yours. Love the work that you did. I'm going all the way back to TikTok. I just love the work that you've done. We've passed each other a few times on a few shows, but never actually got to sit down and talk. But I have, like I said, I've absolutely loved what you do, the way you approach things, the way you talk about things. So let's dig into it. For the folks that don't know, this is the amazing Jessica Piper. Well, you know what? I'll let you do the introduction. You tell them a little bit about yourself, Jessica, if you don't mind. Former school teacher, ran for office.
Yeah, it's so good to be here. Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for inviting me. I really enjoy what you do as well. Hello, everybody. My name is Jess Piper. I have been summoned from the cornfields and the bean fields of Northwest Missouri. I was a literature teacher for 16 years. Missouri passed an abortion ban in 2019 that sort of, set me off. Of course, 2016 woke me up, but 2019, that abortion ban kind of set me off. But in Missouri, you can't run for office and keep your teaching job. So I kind of let things slide for a little bit. But in 2020, I went to vote for Joe Biden, and there was no one on my ballot for me to vote for. No state rep, no state senate, because there weren't Democrats running. So I decided I would run, and I did.
I got to tell you, that takes bravery. It really does. It's one thing to do what I do, sit here and run your mouth and talk. Like our audience, Jess, I've got to tell you, I tell everybody that comes this, you're going to absolutely love the community here. You are. These people are above average intelligence. They're successful. You're going to see. There are doctors. There are lawyers. And it's an international audience. I mean, we've got people here. We're going to talk a little bit about Germany later on today. Something's happened in Turingen, Germany, that's relevant to our conversation. We've got people from Germany, from Norway, from Africa, from Australia. You're going to love the audience here. And as we talk, it's going to blow your mind. They're not just going to be discussing what we're talking about. They're going to be running a parallel conversation. And a lot of times they're going to be like ahead of us. I mean, so many times I got to tell them that, a comment will come up and I'm like, I'm 2 minutes. I promise you. That's where I'm going. You're going to love this. You're going to love this. But let's dive right in and talk about, let's get local first.
Mm-hmm.
Bailey. I loved the take you put out on him suing Media Matters and the nuts, because we've got Evil Popeye here in Texas.
Yes.
Ken Pack does a lot of the same stuff, but to just let the folks know first of all, who your attorney general is and the crap he pulls, because this is just doesn't get enough national attention as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Andrew Bailey is our current attorney general, and we've had a succession of really awful attorney generals. Everyone listening should know that Missouri has been under a GOP supermajority for 22 years. We do not have one Democrat elected statewide. So when people are like, we have politicians all the time, Andrew Bailey, one of them, talking about running against the liberal elite or the liberal left. And I'm like, are they in the room with you right now? Like, who are you talking about? There is not one elected statewide. But Andrew Bailey follows Eric Schmidt, who sued our schools because we had mask mandates during COVID, and now we elected him to Senate. Before Eric Schmidt was Josh Hawley. I'm sure that that name rings a couple bells. So we've had this awful succession of AGs who aren't there to do the job, but are there to get the next job, right? They like to run for Senate. So Andrew was not elected. He was appointed by our Republican governor after Eric Schmidt took a Senate position, and he has been nothing but awful since he stepped in. And this is things that folks should know. Texas is running the same thing with Ken Paxton. What happens is we have really wealthy people come in and technically buy off our AGs. And the reason they do that is because they want to put things like Roe. Why did Roe fall? Because of Mississippi, right? Because they sued. If not for Mississippi, we would all still have abortion rights. If not for Missouri and my AG, you guys would have student loan relief. But my AG sues against it, right? Your AG is also in that same suit. So they're reaching into red states. Republicans and libertarians really realized a long time ago, you don't have to take the country over in a coup, right? You can do it state by state, and you can buy an AG who can give you the world and give you every case you want, because guess what? SCOTUS is captured right now. And they're going to get the rulings they want. So our AG is just constantly, suing everybody and their dog, not doing anything for the state of Missouri. I get robocalls every day. I get robo texts every day. That's his actual job, right? The actual job of the AG is to make sure that Missourians are safe. But instead, he's suing on behalf of Elon Musk.
Yeah, we get this exact same crap with evil Popeye here. He just they act as agents of the Republican Party and wealthy donors. That's what they do. That's all they frickin' do, and it just drives me just insane. Like right now, you've got Ken Paxton suing Bear County and suing Harris County because those counties want to mail out voter registration forms to people.
God forbid people vote.
I know, right? Well, you and I both know the politics of that. The Republican Party is filled with radicals. Those radicals vote in extremely high numbers compared to the rest of the population. But they are not themselves an extremely large part of the population. So if normal people just go vote, they lose.
Right.
And so that's what they try to do.
Right. And so like this year, Missouri is going to have abortion on the ballot, like several other states, and it's going to win. Abortion has been on the ballot in 7 states. It has won handily in all 7 states. It will win in Missouri. So we have Republican lawmakers right now trying to sue to get it off the ballot. Well, here's the thing. They told us we needed 180,000 signatures to put it on the ballot. We gathered 380,000 signatures because that's how important this issue is to Missourians. And when people talk about writing off Missouri as a red state, we have legalized weed, right? We beat back right to work. We expanded Medicaid. Like, we are a progressive state. We're gerrymandered and we're uncontested. When I go to vote in November, I will not have a state rep candidate to vote for because there is not a Democrat running. And this has been, you know me, I've been saying this for years, preaching it from the mountaintops, actually, the prairies. But if we can't vote in our self-interest, people always say, Paul, right? You get what you vote for. I can't vote for anybody.
And believe me, I know what you're talking about. There are no mountaintops where you're at. I've got kin in St. Joseph, so flat. I mean, but I got to tell you, I don't really. It's a problem for us. I talk about it all the time. What you're talking about with Missouri, if you actually just go talk to the people, just like here in Texas, people are like, well, Texas turned blue. I'm like, Texas is already blue.
Yes.
Texas is already blue. What we have is, and I don't really wrap people's knuckles too hard for this, because people that think like us tend to have lives.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people just are not politically involved. They're not politically aware. They don't know just how well. They're starting to get an idea with things changing. Nobody ever saw Bro going away. Nobody ever saw the churches and the radicals rolling things back to the. We're headed for burkas, man. I mean, we are. These people are not normal. They are radicals. But your average Democrat has a life, and I tell people all the time, Texas is not a red state. Texas is a non-voting state. And that's the message we've got to get, because like you're talking about Andrew Bailey suing Media Matters for Elon Musk. Nobody in Missouri wants that. Nobody. There's a handful of people that get really big donations from billionaires that want that kind of stuff. The rest of Missouri doesn't want that.
No, and that's the thing. We knocked over 1,000 doors. My campaign did, in an area that hadn't had anybody, campaigning in decades. In fact, that nobody has been campaigning, because when I went to polling places on election day, and I stood way further back than the law says, the cops were calling me all day long, because people had never seen someone standing at the polls and thought it must be against the law. So finally, after the sheriff's office came so many times, I was like, forget it. And so I went home, but I knocked doors. And I tell you, not one person came out and talked about Media Matters. Nobody came out and talked about trans kids in bathrooms. Nobody came out and said, you ought to ban some books. Nobody said we should send our tax money to private religious schools that we don't have any access to, right? Nobody says the crap that these people are fighting for, because it doesn't mean anything to these folks, because groceries are high, because eggs are high, because our wages have not went up, because you can't find housing, because people come and buy it up. These corporations buy it up. And so people don't have housing. For God's sake, we're trying to convince a new generation of kids to live in vans because housing is out of bounds for them, right? There are so many problems. And we sue Media Matters, and we talk about trans kids, and we pass abortion bans so that people who have been raped, or women who have no access to healthcare or education or anything, and we're forcing them to have babies, right? And I say this all the time. One of a Missouri senator, his name is Mike Moon, stood on the freaking floor and advocated for 12-year-olds to be married. 12-year-olds.
I saw that. I actually played that video here on the show.
That is a senator from Missouri, right? I want him to know, I have a 12-year-old daughter. You know what? She lost a tooth the other day. He's talking about children who haven't even lost their baby teeth. He's talking about forcing children to have babies who still literally fit the mold for a child seat, for a booster seat. These people are disgusting. And these are the things that people are worried about, not Elon Musk. Who gives a crap? Nobody cares about this. But we have a GOP supermajority. They do what they want. They don't answer to the people. They run uncontested, and they don't care. And that was the impetus for me to stand up and do something, because I could call my representative all day long. I know him. He didn't care. He's not going to call me back. What does it matter? I don't give him any money. I didn't put him there.
Yep. And people don't realize just how radical it's become. Here in the state of Texas, give you an example. My brother-in-law, say he's busy, doesn't have a chance to run down and get his registration form turned in. He fills it out. He signs it. I'm his brother-in-law. I'm his kin. I'm his family. He hands me that voter registration form, and I go drop it in a mailbox for him. I've committed a crime in the state of Texas. I've committed a crime in the state of Texas. You've got a lot of elderly people that just aren't mobile. They just aren't. And we Democrats are like, hey, you've got a lot of issues that the government looks at. You should vote. And we do everything we can to help them vote. But they put these ridiculous roadblocks in the way. You can't take documents to the elderly person and say, here, do what you will with them. hand them back to us, and then we turn them in for you. No, no. We've got to take the elderly person to the documents, then back home, let them fill them out, and then take the elderly person again to the mailbox. I mean, they've got to, to drop off their paperwork. And God forbid they're even making rules about which people in the state. I'm not even joking when I say this. There are regulations in the state of Texas for who you can help and who you can't. They literally have to classify themselves and prove that they're infirm enough for someone to legally help them. That's what Ken Paxton is suing LULAC over right now, because LULAC is really great. League of United Latin American Citizens, they are fantastic. They are grassroots. They're in the communities, and they literally help people do things like this. And Ken Paxton is losing his damn minds because they're voting.
Right. I mean, the whole goal is to suppress the vote. They can't win if we all vote. They just can't. They don't have policies, or they're unpopular policies, right? And there's no excuse these days to even say that they're, fiscally conservative. They're none of the things they said they were. And when we gave them power, they proved it. You could look to Missouri and you could say, if the GOP, a complete GOP trifecta, created a utopia, then that should be Missouri. Right? But instead, we're 50th for teacher pay. We're 50th for school funding. We're 50th for our state workers. Our roads are crumbling. My road looks like gravel. It was paved at one point, right? We don't have shoulders. You ever met a combine on a small highway without a shoulder, right? They don't care, right? They don't care what they're doing. And so that's why we have to have candidates everywhere, because you got to have someone knocking a door in their community and saying, like I did, I know Jeff seems like a nice guy, right? I mean, he's a good guy, right? But this is how he's voting, friend. He's voting to defund the schools. And when you do that in my community, it's all we got left. I live in a town of 480 people, and everything happens at that high school. Once that school is gone, my community will completely fold. And that's going to happen to, rural communities all across the state, all across the country. Because you can give me 20 vouchers and it doesn't matter. I got nowhere to take my kid. Once you close that school, I'm done. But Paul, people need to realize that was the point. Yep. Betsy DeVos was given an interview, and a reporter asked her, what does school choice look like in a rural area? Because we don't have school choice, right? There's no schools except for the public schools. She said, well, I think kids could put on a pair of headphones and listen to great books as they go out into the field and work. And after they're done working, maybe they could get, an apprenticeship at John Deere. And then after that, they could have a private tutor in the evening. So this is what she's telling you. My kid's not worth it. It's not worth having a building to educate my kid in, right? She should be working. Yep. And that's why they roll back child labor laws at the same time that they're putting in vouchers. They're saying it out loud. And all you have to do is knock a couple doors and tell your neighbors, and they're mad about that, right? That's all we got is the school.
Yeah. And they will just flat out lie. I mean, you're talking about Betsy DeVos and the stuff that these voucher pushers, because it's huge here in Texas. We've got a couple billionaires, Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilks, that have funded to the teeth Republicans for this school voucher stuff. They fancied themselves pastors. Both of them are part of pretty radical churches. And they think that they're going to tap their churches into our revenue stream. And they don't really give a damn what happens to like you say, to the rest of the population. They don't care. Mm-hmm. I mean, in their view, the world needs dumbasses too. I mean, they just don't care, and they don't understand. I mean, they understand fully. I meant to say, they understand fully that they're lying.
Yes.
When they try to tell you, well, school choice will just make for better schools because schools will have to compete. No. They don't understand. Johnny Rock's school doesn't want your kid.
Right.
They don't want your kid. They have enough resources that if they wanted your kid, they could let your kid in for free. They don't want your kid and the little pittance.
That's why they raise the price of the school over the voucher. That's why they do that. And people who think that a voucher is going to give you some elite education. Someone like me, no, it's not. You give me $7,000. The only place it's going to take that's a local Baptist school that opened up their basement and made a couple cuticles and have people who were uncertified feeding your kids, worksheets and work on a Chromebook. And maybe you can play in the parking lot of the old Pizza Hut when, they make that one into a school too. These are not elite educations because they don't want our kids, like you were saying. My kid isn't elite to them, and they're going to raise the price until they can keep her out. That's the point. And you can look at places like Iowa, who just passed voucher bills last year. And what happened? Almost every single school raised the price of tuition because they got the voucher money, and now they can still make you pay. And by the way, vouchers will absolutely decimate a state budget. Look at Arizona. $1 billion hole was blown into Arizona's budget because of vouchers. In every single state we've seen this, it has happened. And you got states like mine, Missouri, who just last year are trying to pass universal vouchers. Look at Arizona and say, hey, how about that? It blew $1 million hole. What do you mean? We have shown this over and over again. Your state, though, your state held, and so did Tennessee. And this is why, because rural Republican lawmakers know they cannot go back to their communities saying, I closed the schools. So they are in between a rock and a hard place. And what do the rich people do? They run somebody against them, right, in the primaries. They run one of their lackeys to beat them in the primaries. And so far, Texas has held. I know it's going to come back again this year, just like it is in Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
But at least it held last year.
That's actually what's happened in the primaries here in Texas is the folks that wouldn't go along, the Republicans that were scared to lose their seat because of the results that we're getting from this have been primary.
Yeah.
Every primary sees the Republican Party get more and more and more distilled into this radical entity. And these billionaires don't give a damn. I call them the billionaire frat boy club. They don't give a damn. They really don't. They're in their 70s and 80s. They've got more money than their grandchildren can spend. All they care about is, hey, I want to get my church into the tax revenue stream. That's the goal. That is the goal. And that's the deal that they made with the devil. The Republican Party made with the devil. And that's what I call the people at these churches, the devil, because they made a deal. They went to these people that are radicals, extremists. So I'm gonna bring us something up here. I want to get your take on here in just a second. That's along these lines. That are these radical extremists, but they vote. Mm-hmm. They vote. They vote in 80% numbers, 90% numbers. They will do anything they'll crawl through burning broken glass to vote. So they made a deal with these radicals to do things like that. I will get your church into the taxpayers' revenue stream. That's really it. Follow the money, people.
Yeah,
follow the money.
We know that vouchers are propping up churches who have lost, revenue because people aren't necessarily going to church as much as they did. So there's study after study after study proving that point exactly. And no, these rich people, they don't care. And that's what, when I talk to regular people, I'm like, when's the last time a billionaire wanted to do something for you, right? They are not trying to help your kid. They're not trying to help poor kids. If they were trying to help poor kids, they'd be funding my school, with 56% poverty rate, right? But they're not. They're trying to put them on a bus an hour away because they want to close these schools because they don't want to pay taxes. And that, at the end of the day, is their impetus for doing anything, is that they don't want to pay taxes. They don't want to pay them for roads. They don't want to pay them for state workers or nursing homes or schools or any of the things. And also, they want to break one of the biggest unions in the country, and that's the teachers union.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Average people organized and voting for their interest absolutely is something they despise and hate. I want to get your take on this, Jess. This is something, we talk about the abortion issue all the time. And one of the things I try to do here is show where the rubber meets the road. I've had guests on that have had just heart-wrenching stories. Just heartbreaking. This is something that is going on in Louisiana, one of our neighbor states, not that far from where you live, not that far from where literally only minutes from where I live. I live in the northeast corner of Texas. I'm not that far from you, actually. We're almost neighbors, except for them pesky Arkansas people in the way. No,
Razorbacks.
but you got them too, huh? Anyway, boy, I'm gonna catch hell for that in the emails. Oh
Well,
God,
now I'll tell
whoo.
you, I'm originally from Arkansas, so I can dog them all day long. I'm literally I'm from Ozark, Arkansas, home of the hillbillies. So, and that's why I can't stand JD Vance, the shillbilly, right? I mean, he ain't a hillbilly.
No, no. This is actually something that they're grappling with. They, anything that had anything to do with an abortion, uh, lawmakers have done in crazy radical stuff to appease, like I said, the radicals in the churches that don't know crap about medicine. They don't know crap about anything that they're talking about, and they're super extremist. This is a real problem. If you give birth, sometimes there are things like, torn placenta, or you've got, you'll get bleeding when the placenta separates. Things like that happen. And there's a drug called misoprostol that's used. And yes, it's used during abortions just in case something happens and you develop a hemorrhage internally. It's not like if you have something on your arm where they can slap a bandage on it and control the bleeding. If something like this happens during birth, and it happens during birth, and misoprostol is not just used for abortions. It's on the crash cart. It was one of the drugs that were available to doctors immediately in emergency rooms during births, because it happens sometimes, folks. It really happens. People, giving birth will sometimes have hemorrhaging. They have reclassified misoprostol as a class 4 drug, similar to a narcotic. It's same classification as Xanax or Soma or Darvocet or Valium or tramadol, or any of these drugs that you hear getting abused. They have reclassified this because it was once, it's used as part of an abortion. This is a problem. I mean, a real problem. If a woman starts to hemorrhage during birth, you don't have all the time in the world. Like I said, you can't slap a bandage on it, keep pressure on it, and stop the bleeding. You can't do that. This drug is literally life-saving. And now, instead of a doctor being able to turn to a nurse and say, administer X amount of misoprostol, so that we don't have to jam a needle the size of a fire hose into this woman's arm and flood her with fluids or blood transfusions, which is dangerous, folks. It is dangerous. I had a conversation, Jess, with a guy the other day that had pericarditis because he was given too many fluids in the hospital. Your body can only deal with fluids so many ways, and it builds up on your heart. It's dangerous to give these massive transfusions, and you've got someone that's literally bleeding. You can't stop the bleeding because, like I said, you can't slap gauze on it. It's internal. They've taken this drug and made it to where a doctor literally has to script it, send it down and be requested, then run back up to the emergency room to be administered, instead of it being right there where the doctor needs it.
The whole thing.
These are real practical things that these radicals are problems they're causing because they're idiots. They're ignorant. They don't know anything about this. They're not doctors, and they're so arrogant, Jess.
The whole point is that, women are second-class citizens. Nothing matters except for our ability to procreate. And if you don't believe me, ask JD Vance, right? He'll tell you right now. If you don't have the ability to reproduce, you're not worth being in this country. You should pay higher taxes. Didn't he say that? He said, that they're miserable people, that we shouldn't have teachers who don't have children. My sister-in-law, she taught in Title I schools for 35 years. She has helped people, these little children, believe in themselves and become doctors and become lawyers from St. Joseph, Missouri. You know about St. Joe. You know that
Hmm.
town filled with lots of poverty. She doesn't have any children, couldn't have any children. So she's worthless, right? She shouldn't be teaching, right? That is I've never heard a jackass statement like that in my life. And I was infuriated because that woman has done more for anybody. But the thing is, they don't care about women. And Paul, let me tell you this, and this is everything in a nutshell to me. My husband had a medical emergency. When we presented in the emergency room, he was near death. And you know what happened, Paul? They treated him. They didn't tell him to go to the waiting room and bleed out. They didn't tell him to go home and wait for his blood pressure to drop. They didn't tell him to sit there and wait until he was septic. They treated him without asking another doctor, without asking a lawyer, without asking a lawmaker. Now, what's the difference? The difference is if I presented pregnant and bleeding, they would say, you got to get closer to death before we can treat you because we may lose our medical license. And that's the heart of the matter. They're going to ban things that keep women alive. The most danger I have ever been in my life was when I was pregnant. I was pregnant 3 times. I have never been closer to death or more sick in my life than I was then. People think it's some sort of natural action, like I can drop a baby and go back and start the laundry, right? People do think that because they're insane, because they don't know women, because they haven't given birth themselves. They don't know. But the point of the matter is, I do not have any value in this society to these Republicans if I haven't reproduced, if I'm not submissive, if I'm not doing what I'm told, right? Because they don't care about women. So when they pass these abortion bans, guess what? Missouri, we lost 25% of the doctors who would come here to be OBGYNs. We are losing regular health care. Women don't have access to pap smears because OBs are not going to practice in the state of Missouri. I know a woman who graduated from UMKC, right? University of Missouri, Kansas City in Missouri. She is a high risk OB. Guess what she did the day she graduated? She moved to Kansas. Moved to Kansas because you cannot stay in this state and take care of women. You cannot take care of women ethically under an abortion ban. You can ban the drugs, you can ban the procedure, you can do whatever, you will kill women. They don't care. And that's why I'm getting to the point where I don't think these women should have to share anymore. You should just accept that we are women and we have medical emergencies, and whatever you have to do, you have to do. They don't care about our stories. They don't care how close we were to death. We do. They don't. I can say it till I'm blue in the face. They don't care because when it comes down to it, they've got this line they think they won't cross, but they're not as popular as they think, right? 73% of Missourians say it ought to be between a woman and her doctor. And people will look at rural parts of states and say, well, they're voting against their self-interest. Well, guess what? My neighbors are mad too. The reason I live in the middle of nowhere is because I don't want anyone to tell me what to do. I'm a Democrat. I'm a progressive. My neighbors don't want anyone to tell them what to do either. And that includes overstepping and getting into healthcare. Every one of my neighbors will say the same thing. Not for me, but it's not my business. And women shouldn't die. And those are Republicans.
Yeah, and I say that all the time, Jess. I do. If you just talk, if you don't talk labels, I've got a son who's just MAGA as can be. I swear he does it to piss me off.
Oh, I'm
But he is
sorry.
MAGA as can be. If we just talk about subjects, we agree.
Right.
We do. We agree. We agree. But the minute you put the label on it, nope.
Yep.
Yeah, and it got to the point where we really just don't talk very much for a long time, because just that side is just insane. They really are. And I hate to say that my son got radicalized, but he was pretty damn radical there for a while. I mean, he got to the point where I just could, son, I can't listen to you. I just can't.
And I see how it happened. I was speaking in Columbia, Missouri a couple weeks ago and staying in a hotel, and I came down and Fox News was on the TV in the breakfast area. So I went to the desk and I said, hey, can we turn it? Cooking, I don't care, whatever. I'm not listening to Fox News. She said, you can, but that man in there has the remote. And I walked in there and saw him, and I'm not going to start a fight. But I had to listen to Fox News, right, while I was eating breakfast. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. story after story after story about an immigrant killing someone, an immigrant raping someone, an immigrant taking jobs. And I was like, oh my God, no wonder they speak nonstop about this, because that's all they
Yep.
hear. I had no idea because I don't listen to that crap, right?
Yep.
And it is,
And it's
it's
not, I hate to interrupt you. I really do
no,
hate to interrupt
no,
you. But it's not that you didn't realize that that was really happening. You didn't realize why they were so screwed up, because
yeah,
it's not really happening.
right.
It's not really, it's not real. It's not really happening. Crime is down. Immigrants are the least likely person to commit crime.
Yeah.
It's not real. And I apologize. I mean, I continue.
No,
I'm sorry
no,
for interrupting.
no, you're exactly right. It's because, way back in the day, in the fairness doctrine, that's all been unwound and undone. But way back in the day, we could have different political views, but we were all watching CBS or NBC or ABC, right? I mean, we got basically the same news. And now you have people that aren't even on the same planet. So when I listen to people, my family is MAGA too. Almost all of my family. My children aren't, thank God. But I have to constantly talk to them, especially boys. Right? It's tough with boys. You have to, because they are radicalized through social media and through YouTube and all the things. But anyway, yeah, it's not even in the same realm. But you were talking just a minute ago about you and your son agreeing on basically the same premises. And that's
Yeah.
what I realized when I was knocking doors. I didn't have it on, I'm smart. I didn't put it on my flyer that I was a Democrat. I would hand it to them and they would say, are you a Republican or Democrat? And then I would tell them and they would say, well, I agree with you, but I can't vote for you because I'm a Christian. And I was always like, what? Born and raised a Southern Baptist. What do you want to have a Bible contest? You want to recite
Yeah.
some verses? I'll beat you every day of the week, right? It has
That
nothing
person
to
has
do
no
with it.
clue what it means to be a Christian.
But they're taught that. And when I say all the time, people will say the Democrats left rural parts of America. I agree, they did. But guess who else did? The Republicans. But you know who stayed behind? The churches. These Republicans do not have to come into communities and campaign because the church is doing the work for them. They're handing out, like you said, voter guides. They're giving them voter guides and saying, this is who you vote for. So you don't have to have Republicans organizing in rural spaces. You got the church.
And when you're talking about, I like to draw people's attention. I like to back up, look at it from a macro perspective. People think that this message, this guy that you're sitting there with the remote watching this, thinks that this is a message that really is him.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks that this is his life and what's going on with him. He doesn't realize that message is global.
Right.
It comes out of we talk about it on this show all the time, Jess. We do. The FSB, it is what came after the KGB. They came up with strategies for infiltrating Western and weakening Western countries, how to divide us. Their playbook, their biggest playbook, is one of the oldest: immigration. You remember that old movie with Daniel Day-Lewis and his name, Leonardo DiCaprio, Gangs of New York, all based on anti-immigration. I mean, this is literally, I realize that's Hollywood, but it's really based on something. If you go back and look at old historical news articles and whatnot, this is the oldest grift in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never been true. It's never been true. Immigrants are too busy starting their lives to worry about the nonsense of crime and whatnot. They always tend to be some of the lowest participants in crime, violent crime, and especially at a time like this. I cannot reiterate enough. Crime statistics show we're living as one of the safest times to ever live in America. But it's not just America. I want you to introduce you to somebody. This is Bjorn Hocker. And German folks in the chat, I know you're here. Tell them about Bjorn Hocker. This guy's a radical. I mean, he is a nutter out there. And he repeats Putin's talking points. And his political party just won local elections in the German state of Thüringen, or we call it Thuringia. This guy, if you just handed somebody a manuscript and didn't, no accent, no anything, and didn't put a name on it, you would think this was Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. It's the same anti-immigrant. It's the same thing we heard in Italy right before the elections, all the boat people showing up and all the anti-immigrant nonsense. But the AFD just won big in Turingen because of this same made up, fabricated nonsense. And it's insane. It is insane. Literally repeating Nazi slogans. He was actually prosecuted for this. He is repeating Putin's talking points. And these people don't understand. That guy holding that remote has no clue that what he's hearing from Fox News, those are Putin's talking points. And they're identical to what you hear in Finland, Norway, Italy, France, Marine Le Pen in France, same exact talking points. This is not something that's based in reality. It's not something that you're supposed to actually, it is psychologically designed to appeal to bigots, to scare the shit out of old people. The message is really simple. If you're old, be scared. And if you're young, life is hard because of them.
Right.
Not you. You're special. You're perfect. It's not your life's choices. It's not what you did. It's them. And it's global. And so, when you can back the camera out and you can show them, look, you're not special, dude. This is the same. There's an old dude in frickin' Norway that's repeating the same shit you are because it's the same damn rhetoric worldwide.
Yeah.
And I mean,
that's what propaganda is supposed to do, is to create an other, to make it feel like, it's us versus them. And that's why they use that propaganda. And it's so sad that it has been used really well against, my parents. I wrote a story, a really sad story about my dad and how he died being a MAGA, and how on his deathbed, he apologized for Facebook post. And that to me makes me so angry that Daddy died saying he was sorry for saying things about the Department of Education. And I kept telling him, Daddy, stop. Like, we only have this much time. You're dying right now. But he knew what had happened, and he was trying to make amends before he passed away. And I'm so mad at Fox, and I'm so mad at OAN and Breitbart and all of those disgusting people who took our parents, and took them down these rabbit holes. And yes, my dad had free will, but he was listening to that nonstop. How could you not listen to that nonstop and start humming along? There's only so long that they don't break. And that's what happened to my dad. But they spoke to him just like Rush and Tucker Carlson and all this. They spoke to him because he was mad about something, right? And they took that anger and they focused it on somewhere else. People and people talk about white people all the time. There was this book just written called White Rule Rage. I won't read it because there is reason for people out here to be mad. They have taken our communities. They have folded them. My children aren't going to stay here. My children are going to be 2 hours away from me in Kansas City because there's no jobs here, because our schools are 4 days a week, because there is no childcare, because if you got sick, you got to go to Kansas City to get care. There's reason for us to be mad, but they have pointed our anger in the wrong way. It was misplaced, and they put it on immigrants, and they put it on women who need health care instead of saying, we're the ones who've been in charge for 23 years, right? This is hilarious what we have done, and we have you still looking at brown people and saying they're the problem. No.
Yep.
It's your lawmaker.
It's the billionaires. It really is. They don't want to pay these taxes. They don't. It really boils down to that. I had a conversation with a woman not too long ago. She's like, why don't we do this anymore? She's talking about Notre Dame Cathedral. Why don't we do amazing things like this anymore? And I said, because you used to have a king that had the power of life and death over people that would go to rich people and say, give me money.
Yeah.
Give me money. Give me cattle for my army that I'm going to use to keep you under control, and give me money. And if you don't, I'll kill you. Mm-hmm. That's the way it used to be. And I'm not advocating, don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating for that. Then they would take that money and they would build freaking amazing things. They really would. But today, the billionaires manipulate our system, and they've got control of an entire political party, and they don't want to give up that money. And the reason I say that is that's the way it's always been, folks. They're not picked on. They're not poor, pitiful. Elon Musk is not poor, pitiful, picked on. Through a human entire history, the grunt that goes out and digs ditches has never funded anything. He's been critical to the whole operation the entire time. People that work are important. Labor is important. But they don't pay the bills, folks. It's the guy that's drawing all the revenues from that labor that has always, throughout our entire human existence, paid those bills.
And we can talk about the billionaires of today are the same billionaires. If you haven't read Democracy in Chains, if your folks haven't read it, please make it the first thing that you read when you're done listening to this. Nancy McLean, Democracy in Chains. She starts from the beginning, how this happened. But the billionaires are the children and grandchildren of the millionaires who were pissed off when we passed, when we had FDR's, all of his policies. They didn't want to pay their fair share. They don't want to pay their fair share. They get out of paying it when we have people like Trump in office. But it all goes back to that New Deal. They're mad from the 1930s. 100 years later, nearly, they're still pissed about that. And they haven't gotten over it. Because prior to that, if you were old and hungry and didn't have someone to take care of you, you died. And they were okay with that. Before the New Deal, if your kid didn't have shoes and didn't have a school to go to, sorry, sounds like a personal problem, right? But FDR put into place several things that we still, Social Security, all the things we still see now. Actually, Frances Perkins, who is a woman, and thank you, Frances. But that was one of his policies, right? They're still mad about that. And they're still fighting because at the end of the day, they don't think they owe anybody anything. They don't want to live in a society. They don't care about roads. They have airplanes, right? They don't want to live in a society. But the simple fact that they got people like my dad to think that he didn't want to live in a society, that's where things went off the rails. And I would say, Daddy, you're on Social Security. Daddy, you're driving the roads. You visit the library. You go online on the internet to write crazy things, and that is subsidized by the federal government. Like everything around us is this system that we set up to try to make it more equal for folks. And right from the beginning, they were like, absolutely not. There is not one billionaire who is out to do anything good. We used to when you were talking about projects, we used to have millionaires and billionaires. Think of Carnegie, and he put all those libraries, like there's libraries all in little towns from the Carnegies. But here's the thing. He could have just he could have paid his fair share, and I could have had healthcare. And we could have built a library anyway with the taxes, right? So instead of letting them do their vanity projects, just tax them. And we'll do good things with the tax money, right? But they don't want to do that.
No, I agree with you 100%. 100%. And, I'm not afraid to say it. It all boils down to bigotry. It really does. That's how it works. Even the best people, it boils down to a fear of others. And, this is just biology, folks. It really is. We are naturally programmed. We have not evolved out of this. We are naturally programmed to feel safe around our own tribe, the people that look like us, and unsafe around people not to hate them. That's not programmed into us. It is a physiological reaction. Until you evolve and grow. And you learn to recognize people with different characters, different features, different skin tones, different eye colors as your tribe. You will be on guard with them. And those people, especially rural people that don't travel, that don't get out, are extremely tribal and extremely susceptible to these radical ass, crazy messages about the other. They don't know. I grew up in South Texas. They talk about the border and I just laugh at them. I'm like, dude, if you ever want to break down somewhere, break down in a border town. Mm-hmm. You'll get 10 people that will stop. You'll have a group of mechanics around you that are just like trying to get you going again. The worst place in the world to break down is, in these homogenized rural communities like where I live. These are not, and people just don't get it. They just don't get what causes this, why the message is what it is. It's really that simple.
It's easy to scare people, and that's a tactic that they use. But I would say in my rural community, it's like what you were talking about earlier, and I wrote about this a couple days ago. Why don't people pay attention? They're working 2 jobs because you've got a single mom whose kids are in school and she works and she has to make supper and she has to make lunch and she has to get them to practice and they have to have clean clothes, right? There's only so many hours in the day. And so when it's easier to just point to someone and say, this is the problem, and go, okay, all right, this is the problem, right? And it's actually not the problem. And when you talk to people, they realize that. So this is where, again, having a candidate in every space, knocking doors and talking to people, and letting them realize we're basically the same. We're on the same, message. And I was driving through, we had a terrible bigoted man named Bill Eigel, who is a state senator who ran for governor as a Republican. And he didn't win the primary. But I was driving across the state, which my district is the whole third of the top of the state because it's so rural. So I was driving across and I saw a sign for him in a little town. And it said Bill Eigel. And then underneath it in quotations, it said deport illegals. And I was mad. But then when I pulled over, I immediately went to look at the demographics of that town. 98% white. And he has the gall to go. I mean, the problem is no one's illegal, the bigger problem. But the thing is, he's resonating in places that have absolutely no people who are worried about their documentation, right? And so that's frustrating. That's why we have to have people talking to each other to break them out of that information cycle or silo. And I'll say this too, it's not just people listening to Fox News. If you open up my regular paper, there's 2 of them in our community that come out once a week. Every single column is written by a conservative. Every single lawmaker that I have, from the dog catcher to my senator, is a Republican. They give them space to write these columns. What do you think they're writing about? Right? Mm-hmm. So you don't even have to watch Fox News. Just open the paper.
I guarantee you, they're not writing about their ingrate kid or ingrate nephew that's holed up in a trailer, because you've got them in your area too. It's a white guy missing teeth, cooking meth. That is the real crime wave out in rural. My neighbor had a horse trough stolen that was worth about $400. It was the meth head up the street. That had nothing to do with illegals or people of color or anything. No, it's a lily white dude with tattoos and no teeth, smoking meth, that needed cash, stole his horse trough and sold it for like $50. I mean, that's real crime in rural America, but that's not what they write about, man. That's not what they write about, because that is so easy to just point the finger at the other people you've never had any contact. That's why this whole LGBTQIA plus sells so well with these Republicans, because the gay people they do have in their communities stay in the closet because of the extreme bigotry. So they don't have any relationship whatsoever with people of the LGBTQIA community. So you can tell them anything. And as long as it plays to their bigotry and fear, oh yeah, they'll eat it up. They will. They love it.
It's funny because they have switched their focus from gay folks to trans folks because it's pretty frowned upon to attack gay folks, even in rural spaces. You know, people are like, oh, no, 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 like they're okay with that. Like I said, my kids all graduated from rural schools. I taught in rural schools. Gay kids aren't treated like they once were. It's way more accepted, even among the conservative kids. But the Republicans knew that. So they've changed their focus to trans folks now, right? Because they know. And so I think, and I heard a gay legislator say this. He said 20 years ago, they were attacking me. And in 20 years, they're going to have to find somebody else than the trans people because, you know, they're being more accepted all the time, too. So I will say, yes, and that's why they focused on the bathroom things, because there's no, I don't know any woman inherently scared of a trans person. I just don't. And the only reason I would be scared of a man being in the bathroom is if he's a straight guy and he's going to attack us, right? I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
scared of a trans woman in a bathroom. No, I'm scared of that dude who's, you know, got a stash of guns and is, you know, feels a certain way about women. He's the one I'm scared of. Not a trans woman. I'm not scared of her.
Ever flown on a plane?
Lots of times.
You used a unisex bathroom.
That's what I always, you know, Kansas City we really got roasted for our bathrooms in our new, our Kansas City airport, which is absolutely drop dead gorgeous and has great barbecue tech, Paul. It's not even from Texas. but anyway, we have gender neutral bathrooms and they're great. You know why? It goes floor to ceiling. There's no cracks. It's big. People who have children who are disabled. People, I know a man who his wife has severe dementia. He can use these bathrooms with his wife, right? So when they're making it about trans, you're like, no, you're making it acceptable for anybody who needs a toilet. Like, stop being so weird about people's genitals and where they use the bathroom.
Yeah, because you know, don't even get me started on the whole transgender thing. It really, again, you know, to talk about my son, I just want to be clear about something. The kindest hearted, sweetest person, and you know this with your MAGA family too. My son, if you were transgender and broken down, and my son passed you, he would stop and help you fix your car. He would. But he will repeat these talking points. He will. And we had a conversation, and this is what just is so hilarious. We had a conversation about this because we've started really talking, and we're making a solid effort to spend more time together.
Good.
And he's like, man, and he because I am a proud Democrat, he just really, that bugs the shit out of him. It really does. That I'm a proud Democrat. So he wants me to answer for everything. And he asked me, and he was talking about, he said, you know, I don't have a problem with people. Live your life the way you want to live it. Just don't put it in my face. And I stopped for a second and I looked around and I'm like, we are at a barn. There is nobody. Not only is there not like a transgender person, which is the rarest unicorn on the face of the planet, to be quite honest with you. It is one of the smallest demographics there is. But not only is there not transgender people, there's just nobody. Who's putting Paul, what in your face, man? I mean, I just had to laugh.
We have had an agenda shoved down our throat since the day I was born. I was born and raised a fundamentalist. What was shoved down my throat? Everywhere I go, there's a church or there's a sign telling me I'm going to go to hell if I don't repent, or people are knocking on my door and leaving literature trying to convert me. That is the agenda that has been shoved down our throat, not trans folks. They're trying to live their life under the radar because people want to hurt them. It is a Christian agenda. It is Christian nationalism that is the agenda that is being shoved down everyone's throat.
Yeah. It is. And you know, I'll be honest with you though. I think the fever's breaking, to be quite honest with you. I really do think the fever is breaking. People are looking at this whole Trump thing and they're like, nah, no, we've heard this story before and it sucks. It does. And you know, I actually think that he's figured out that he's going to lose. I got a graph for you here. I think he's figured out that he's going to lose Forgive me. I got about 20 tabs open. I got so much to talk to you about, but we're running out of time. I so appreciate your time. I really do. If you want
Absolutely.
to stick around longer, you can. We usually go about an hour and a half, but you don't have to. I know your time is so valuable.
I could
But
do
look,
another 5 minutes for sure. Oh, I saw this
yeah,
last night, right?
yeah, it was on MSC. I took a screenshot of it so that I'd have it. Um, they're not spending. They're
No.
not. They're not. They're ground. There's no ground game. There's no. They're not buying ads. Um, I really think they figured out that they're going to lose, and they're
Yeah.
just hoarding that cash to
Yeah.
have it. I mean,
Yeah. For
for
lo-
Trump to abuse it and use it.
yeah. I'm going to tell you something about that. And I always talk about Missouri. I'm state central because here's the thing: we can elect Kamala Harris, and I'm positive we're going to if people show up. But I'm positive we're going to win. But is it going to matter to me that much? No, because I still live under a GOP supermajority. I still have an abortion ban and book bans and low paid teachers. Nothing changes for me, right? So I have to work at the state level. But the thing about those numbers is yesterday we found out that the Harris campaign donated $65 million to down ballot candidates in battleground states. So they are sending out the money because they've got this huge pot of money now, right? Because everyone's excited. They're actually going to send that out to states that need it, states that can't, fund campaigns. And so that's, to me, that says who they are. They know they have the war chest they need, and now they're going to filter it down to the state level so that you and I don't live under tyranny. So you and I don't live under minority rule, because God bless it, we got to get Kamala up there, but we got to still work on our states or nothing matters.
Kamala Harris just cut another $40 million check yesterday for down ballot races. I mean, they really are. They're working. Colin Allred here in Texas. You got Lucas Kuntz up in Missouri fighting his ass off to get rid of Josh Hawley. I'm telling you, they need all the help they can get. They really do. Colin Allred's doing an amazing job here. I'm so glad the GOP slept on him. And I don't know why they did, because he's the guy. Pete Sessions was a guy here in Texas he was old school GOP. He had connections going way back. He had huge funders, and Colin Allred at one point had a 16% chance of winning.
Yeah.
And he beat him. He's just really freaking good. And, we Democrats are putting up candidates that are really good real well qualified. Lucas Kuntz, I mean, his resume is amazing. He's a good guy.
And that's one thing and I know you're the same way. I won't listen to 1 minute of somebody talking about, candidate quality, because I have a master's degree. I was a teacher for a long time. I ran against a man who, this is what he ran. These are the two things he said he was running for: to make sure that his grandkids didn't have to eat veggie burgers, and to make sure they had access to guns. He didn't talk about the roads or the schools or the hospitals or abortion bans or books or anything. He talked about those two things, and he kicked my butt. And that's why I think every time when people talk about, candidate quality, you're like, I know. I talk to candidates every day of the week. I try to get folks to run. There's people in Missouri who have PhDs. There's people in Missouri who are medical doctors and lawyers. There are stay-at-home moms. There are teachers. There are firefighters. These are the people that we should be, putting in. But instead, it's always a well-funded lawyer, right? From the GOP. But I do have to go in just a second. But I want to leave folks with this. We have to challenge, we have to oppose every single race, every single ballot, every single state across the country, or nothing changes, right? If people don't have someone to vote for, they can't vote in their self-interest. And I know all about that. And here's the thing too, we have to get used to giving to races that we know aren't going to flip in a cycle. We have to give money to people we know are going to lose. And this is why they stuck their necks out. They did what we asked them to do. And it is immoral not to fund people and not to support them when we said, please run. And they did it. Right. And what I found out in my race, we haven't elected a Democrat in 32 years. We have never elected a woman. I knew what my shot was. Right. But it was worth it. Because when I ran and I raised a ton of money, I raised more money than anybody in the state of Missouri as a state rep when I shouldn't have raised a dime. But because I did that, he had to stay home. He had to knock doors. He had to make calls. He had to show up to forums. He had to show up to debates. He had to say why he was running. He had to tell people that it was only because he didn't want his kids to eat veggie burgers, right? Republicans had to say, oh my God, like I'm going to vote for him still because I'm a Republican, but that guy kind of out there, right? So that's why we run everywhere. That's why we support people even when we know they may not win, because we're building a bench. And because you know what, Paul, this is what the Republicans did, right? Over decades.
Yeah.
They did it.
You know, and I will say this, even you cannot decide they may not win. I use Colin Allred as an example over with Pete Sessions. He ran against Pete Sessions. He was supposed to lose.
Yep.
Pete Sessions, I cannot tell you the kind of political power that guy wielded. He had connections, man. And Colin Allred beat him. He did. No one saw that coming. No one believed it. You have no idea how blue your districts are. You think you live in a bright red district. Yeah, yeah. You think you live in a bright red district. No, you live in a district with a ton of people that don't show up. They don't support candidates. They don't vote. They don't pay attention to politics. I had a conversation with a young woman the other day. She's like, I don't do politics. I don't pay attention to politics. I said, well, you know what? Your landlord does.
Yeah.
The guy that sets your insurance rates, he does politics. Right. All these people do politics. You know, it's like Ann Richards said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yeah, you know? Ask every woman in America. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Jess, I so appreciate you being here. I so appreciate your time. I really do. You got to come back because I could have talked to you for another 2 hours. I just absolutely enjoyed this. It was so good to finally be able to sit down and talk to you. You've got an open invitation anytime you'd like to come. Anytime something important happens, if you want to get a message out, pretty please. You've got a chair available to you.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye. All right. That was great. I love talking to good people. I really do. I love talking to good people. That was a lot of fun. There is one more thing that I really want to cover. It's important. It really is important. You know, we were talking about, we know good people that are MAGA. And you're like, well, MAGA aren't good people. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you're talking about people that are doing bad things because they listen to these messages. I want to play a video. I played it for you before. I want to play a video for you. And we're going to talk about this whole Tucker Carlson thing. But I really want to frame this. I want you to understand when you hear this, you need to know he's taken a lot of information out of context. And he has a message here, a reason for saying this. What this guy is selling in this video, and the reason I'm playing this video is right-wingers, this is part of their indoctrination. When they talk to your kid at college, this is one of the videos they play for him. And the psychology behind it is, we're going to give you some inside information that nobody else has, and you're going to be smarter than everybody else because you are already smart and everybody else is already stupid and they're falling for nonsense. Listen to what he says and how he says it and what he says is bad.
Democracy is a political system in which the people periodically, by majority vote at the polls, select their rulers. The rulers then have absolute power to make whatever laws they please by majority vote among themselves. In a constitutional republic, the people also, by majority vote at the polls, select rulers who make laws by majority vote among themselves. But the rulers cannot make any laws they please because the Constitution severely restricts their lawmaking power. The ideal of a democracy is universal equality. The ideal of a constitutional republic is individual liberty. In this century, great strides have been made toward the goal of subverting our republic and transforming it into a democracy. The foremost tactic of the subverters is subversion of language. By calling a
Sorry, Mike was muted. that video is about 2 minutes longer, but it's not necessary to hear the whole video. You heard what he said. Okay. Equality is bad. And anybody that wants equality is against liberty. Therefore, they have to take your liberty away in order to get their equality. None of that is true. There is no one out there fighting to take your constitutional republic away. And he goes on to quote a lot of the founding fathers and whatnot. Well, let me tell you a little something about the founding fathers. They believed in human trafficking. They did not believe in equality. They believed it was okay to own another human being. They had a lot of crazy, horrible ideas. And when they established our government, they believed that wealthy landowners ought to be the ones making the decisions, and they set up a government to do that. We don't believe that crap anymore. And no one, and I mean no one, is trying to take liberties away just because they are trying to fight for equality. They play that video in order to prime people to believe that anybody that is not acquiescing to their privilege, and they always mean white privilege, they always mean their white privilege, is a bad person trying to hurt the country. That really opens people up. And that guy was extremely well spoken, very slick. He issues a lot of quotes that are taken out of context. And he doesn't really ever explain what is he arguing for. But at the end of the day, if you actually listen to everything he says, what he's arguing for is limiting who gets to vote. And he argues against equality. But your kids listen to that message and they hear his message and they're like, oh, wow. Yeah, I never thought about it that way. Democracy might be bad. No, democracy is not bad. Pure democracy is bad because it's unfunctionable. You can't make pure democracy work. It's like herding cats. That's why we have a republic. But a republic is not the opposite thing of a democracy. It is a type of democracy. Nobody wants pure democracy. They always use that as an example. It's insane. But I wanted you to see somebody, talking slick and being, there you go. Somebody talking, that's well-spoken, selling bad ideas, because Tucker Carlson just had this nut on his show, and the stuff he says is just awful. I mean, just awful. And I want you to listen to what the message is. What is the overarching message that they're selling?
I thought Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War. Now, he didn't kill the most people. He didn't commit the most atrocities. But I believe, and I think when you really get into it and tell the story right and don't leave anything out, you see that he was primarily responsible for that war becoming what it did, becoming something other than an invasion of Poland. Germany, look, they put themselves into a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for this, but his whole regime is responsible for it, that when they went into the East in 1941.
Before we get to this, I'm going to take this point by point and just knock this down. What he's talking about, that first point he made, was that Neville Chamberlain wanted to capitulate, and Churchill said, no, we have to fight these people. We have to fight these people. Tooth and nail, if it ends up in the fields of in the fields of England, we have to fight these people. And he was right. And he was proven right historically. But this guy is saying it didn't have to be that way. We could have went the Neville Chamberlain route and everybody could have capitulated to Hitler. And that is insane. But listen to how well spoken he is. And there are a lot of young people that are going to listen to this guy. They listen to his he's got a podcast. He calls himself a historian. Listen to the things he says, and I'm going to knock him down point by point.
One, they launched a war where they were completely unprepared to deal with the millions and millions of prisoners of war, of local political prisoners and so forth that they were going to have to handle. They went in with no plan for that. And they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead there. You know, you have like letters as early as July, August 1941 from commandants of these makeshift camps that they're setting up for these millions of people who are surrendering or people they're rounding up. And so it's 2 months after, a month or two after Barbarossa was launched. And they're writing back to the high command in Berlin saying, we can't feed these people. We don't have the food to feed these people. And one of them actually says, rather than wait for them all to slowly starve this winter, wouldn't it be more humane to just finish them off quickly now?
Yeah. For the folks that don't know, it was their plan. If you look at what happened in Germany, what they did to their own people before they invaded anyone. Yeah, it was their plan. They didn't go without a plan. They just considered them subhuman. And this guy sells it as though, oh, it's just poor logistical planning. They didn't really intend to kill all those people. They just died by accident, and literally goes on in that whole screed, goes on to talk about how it wasn't intentional. And then he even makes the excuse, you heard it at the end, wouldn't it just be more humane rather than letting all of these people starve to death to just kill them quick? That would make us the good guys, right? Show we cared. Insanity. Pure insanity. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly what their plan was. There are communications within Hitler and his folks, his entire administration. They knew exactly what they were doing. And you can go back and take a look at how they treated their own people before there was ever any prisoners of war to speak of. How they treated their own people as subhuman. Yeah, this is crap. And Tucker Carlson is elevating it and just promoting it. And listen to what he says here. Listen to what Tucker Carlson says here.
Just to take it back to the first thing I said, and I'll shut up and let you answer, but if Churchill is a hero, how come there are British girls begging for drugs on the street of London? And the place is, you know, it's just London is not majority English now. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Well, the people who formulated the version of history that considers Churchill a hero, they like London the way it is now, you know?
But that's not victory. That's like the worst kind of defeat, is it not? I mean, I'm just confused.
If you're an English person who cares about England, then yeah, absolutely it is. I mean, it's forget about victory and defeat. It's the worst thing that can happen.
Just to take.
Yeah. They take a completely fabricated bullshit scenario, like somebody that's got a drug problem, say the entire city is that way, and I assure you London is not. It is an amazing place. That's why it's so incredibly freaking expensive to get a place to live there, because it's freaking amazing. But oh no, it's a drug hellhole with girls. And notice it's girls, the vulnerable. You can't protect your women, man. Protect them from who? The other. And anybody that doesn't hate like they hate, well, we want girls begging on the streets for drugs. Yeah, that's what they're telling your young people. That's the mentality. It was what I was talking about with Jess. The other's always the bad guy. You know, every one of these, New York, London, Paris, any major city like that is multicultural. There are a lot of people that have moved there, and they have always used this same attack. And their goal is just give me power. Give me power, and I'll hurt the people you're afraid of. So yeah, I mean, this is literally the stuff they're peddling now. And he's not the only one, because this is Elon Musk talking about this interview with all of this anti-Semitic, racist, nasty garbage in it. This is what Elon Musk says about it. He promotes it. Very interesting, worth watching. No, it's really crap. It's white supremacy. It's crap. It's garbage. It's not historically accurate in any way. All it does is promote bigotry. That's it. But you have a billionaire promoting this. Why? To keep a portion of the population that they control scared. I mean, you heard it, right? I mean, because I'm not scared of people that don't look like me. I want girls begging in the streets for drugs, man. That's my goal. I like it that way. That's what they just told you. It's a load of crap. It's a load of crap. I just happen to know that immigrants happen to be an engine of the economy, that everybody does better when you have immigrants, that immigrants tend to be less violent. They contribute to your society. I mean, for God's sake, how many of you don't like tacos? I mean, I hate to make it really, stereotypical like that. I mean, but really, immigrants just add spice to life, man. And you heard him say it. If you're English and you care about England, they're bad. No, that's not true at all. That is not true at all. It is not. Well, folks, I got a little warning for you here. I like to keep you ahead of the right-wing propaganda. I do. The Hill used to be a decent publication 25 years ago, highly respected. Then they decided that they needed to split their house in two and have right-wing propaganda versus just actual news. They don't even have a left-wing outfit. They don't. It's just news and right-wing propaganda. And they've really just become terrible. I want you to take a look at this headline. Designed to scare and motivate right-wingers to show up at the polls. There is a surge of COVID right now, which is scary because we're in the summer, and summer is your abatement time. Summer is when you normally see flu viruses and whatnot. They abate. They're not as prevalent. We're seeing a surge in COVID cases. But they say the surge shows we may have to return to 2020 pandemic measures. Pardon me. No, we're not. No, we're not. This is not 2020. This is not a virus. Yes, you're absolutely right. Instead of doing what we could have done, where everybody went and got vaccinated, and Dr. Anthony Fauci was trying desperately to not allow COVID to turn into an endemic. He was trying to control it like we did Ebola, like we did other viruses where we nipped them in the bud. But no, Trump was failing, so we had to come up with bullshit stuff like vaccines are bad, masks are bad, everything that they tried to do to stop this from happening. Now COVID is an endemic. And what an endemic is it's like the flu. It will be here forever, different variants, different strains every year. But the difference is we all now have a measure of immunity, whether it be through vaccines or exposure to COVID. No, this is not 2020, folks. When COVID hit during 2020, none of us had immunity. None of us. That's why it killed so many. Now we do. So no, it would make no sense whatsoever to go back and do the things that we did in 2020 today. It would make no sense whatsoever. But that is the message that they're sending to right-wingers. We lefties, oh my God, there's this COVID surge. They're going to shut you all down again. They're going to make you stay home. They're going to, make you wear masks everywhere, them terrible masks, I mean, that is the propaganda that is coming, folks. You're going to see it over the next few days because the numbers for COVID are pretty rough right now. They are. There's a new strain, very virulent, which scares the shit out of me, to be quite honest with you. Because again, this is summertime. Viruses don't live in heat. They don't. If you're a longtime viewer, I went through how long a virus will last on a doorknob in the middle of winter. It will last days on a doorknob, but in the middle of summer, minutes to hours, depending on the virus and how hardy the different viruses are, but minutes to hours. Somebody coughs in their hand, touches a doorknob, and it's 90 degrees outside. That virus is not going to live for very long. So the fact that this new strain of COVID is actually spreading in the middle of summer, that'll tell you it's going to tear ass through the population in winter. It really is. They've got the new vaccines for it. This new strain, they studied it. They modified the vaccines. You can get vaccinated, or you can catch it and get natural immunity. And the fact that you have some immunity, even though it is a new strain, it's probably not going to kill you, less likely to kill you. But yeah, be vigilant, be aware. There is a new COVID strain out there, very, very, very virulent. And the right-wingers are going to try to use it to convince their people that it's going to be 2020 all over again. Just be ahead of it. Folks, I have so much more to talk about. It's a community. It's up to you. We've been at it an hour and a half. We can keep going, or we can call it a day and talk about some of this stuff another time. It's up to you. I've got 3 or 4 more things to cover. Your choice. All right, we'll keep after it. We've got Mike Pence has finally come out. They're starting, now that Trump is failing so miserably in the polls, they really are eager. The folks, the cowards in the Republican Party are really eager to go ahead and point the fingers now.
From you, will you be endorsing your former president? You were on the ticket with him last time around.
Well, Martha, I appreciate the question. And it should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
We have not heard from you.
Yeah, Mike Pence finally came out and said it. I am not endorsing Donald Trump. Jimmy McCain just came out, the son of John McCain. He's registered as a Democrat, and he said, look, Trump is disgusting. The right is really trying to focus on the Arlington debacle, with Trump disrespecting Arlington the way he did, because John McCain at one point shot a commercial where he showed a clip of him walking through Arlington. The difference being that John McCain apologized profusely for doing that. For years, he apologized for that. Anytime it came up, he apologized for it. And John McCain himself always said that was, and it's a quote, a horrible mistake, unquote. Donald Trump has never apologized for anything he's ever done. And Lord knows he's never admitted that he made a mistake. But this is John McCain's son on CNN the other day. He has registered as a Democrat. He has endorsed Kamala Harris, which is nice to see because, all we ever hear about out of the McCains is Meghan McCain. And I got to tell you, Meghan McCain's a radical. Her husband, Ben Domenech, that dude is beyond fringe. John McCain didn't even like Ben Domenech. He didn't. He never had a nice thing to say about Meghan's husband, not once. He just really never liked Ben Domenech. He just didn't. But this is Jimmy McCain. Like I said, he's come out and endorsed Kamala Harris. This is him on CNN.
I've never forgotten it. And, to remind everyone, John McCain was my father as well. And, he was the guy I went to when I skinned my knee, so to hear those things said about him, I can never forgive. The one thing about John McCain is that he cared about his country and he lived his life that way. So as we moved on, and I was gone for a year, so I didn't have a chance to change. But as soon as I was back, I see, I care about my family. I care about equal rights of everyone in this country. I care about all this. And, as much as I stayed as an independent, I decided that, it was time to move on and do what I believe in. The fact of the matter that he said it constantly is country first. You have to think about your country first. However that is, care about your country. Care about how making it better, not being divided, but being together as one to continue to be the greatest country in the world.
Well said. Well said. He also went on to tear Donald Trump a new ass for his stunt at Arlington. The right wing is attacking. They are attacking Jimmy McCain. They're attacking his military service. They're saying, well, if you served so long, why was he only a lieutenant when he retired? Because he was an enlisted man. He was an enlisted man for the majority of his career. He was not an officer. So yeah, I mean, they're attacking his service. They're attacking his father for also screwing up and doing a commercial at Arlington, which his father profusely apologized for. There's not a lot I agreed with John McCain about, but at least the guy would own up to his mistakes. He would. And he cared enough when the votes really got serious, usually to stand with the American people. I mean, I'll remind you of his vote on Obamacare. His entire party was trying to take Obamacare away from the American people, and he would not do it. But yeah, good to see Jimmy McCain coming out because I'm really sick of Meghan McCain speaking for the McCain family. She is a nut. She is a nut. She is so radical and so far out there. I'm sick of hearing her voice. But yeah, that's not the end of all the crazy. You got old Waters here on Fox News. The racism is on parade. The bigotry is on parade.
Kamala was raised by an Indian mother in Canada, but now she sounds like Fannie Willis.
Yeah, they're attacking Kamala Harris because when she talks, sometimes she sounds black. Yeah, I mean, really, I'm not even joking. That is really what they're doing. It is all over social media. It is all geared towards the bigotry. Like we were talking about, Jess and I were talking about earlier, these messages are really geared towards the bigotry. They're really geared towards establishing people as the other. And it's gross. And it is really, really what they're doing. We got something else for you here real quick. I'm trying to run through these. I know I've had your attention for a very long time, so I'm trying to cover these as quickly as possible. Donald Trump has backpedaled. He backpedaled on the 2025 project after years of hugging Heritage as close as he possibly could. The leaders over at Heritage taking their money, bragging about the 2025 project. All of a sudden, he doesn't know nothing about it. He's flip-flopped on. He came out the other day and said he wanted to legalize marijuana, wanted to legalize pot. That's a lie. That's a lie. His party has voted against every bit of. There's issue after issue after issue. There's a video, of them now pretending to support unions. Yeah, they don't support unions. They're losing, and they're desperately trying to say anything they can. Desperately. And you know that whole stuff about attacking Kamala Harris for the way she talks? Folks, I'm born and raised in Texas. There are times my accent will be thick as thick. And then there will be times when I'm being very careful, when I'm being very measured. I want to make a point. I'm being very cerebral in the things that I am thinking about and saying, in which I will sound like the guy on the 5 o'clock news. That's very normal for people born and raised in the South. It is. We don't all walk around like John Kennedy out of Louisiana, who every time he gets in front of a camera turns into Foghorn Leghorn on purpose. Kennedy is Harvard educated. He does not talk that way normally. He intentionally sounds like Foghorn Leghorn as a political stunt. But most Texans, their accent will be extremely thick sometimes. When I'm with a group of Texans and we're laughing and joking and drinking beer, good God, my accent is thick. It just is. It's just the way it is. But when I'm doing the show or making a video or something like that, it'll go away sometimes. It just does. That's the way it works. They're attacking Kamala Harris because she's with a group that she's very comfortable with. And she sounds one way. And then they play a clip of her very carefully, very measured, very much trying to communicate to everyone. And she doesn't sound the same way. Different audience. If you ask African Americans about it, if you ask Black people about it, they call it code switching. Ask somebody about that. They'll explain code switching to you. But yeah, Donald Trump is flip-flopping on everything. And they are desperate because abortion is destroyed. They are the dogs that caught the bumper on abortion because there is so much that is wrong with the radical crap that they're doing around abortion. And, just the insane stuff, telling people that there are doctors that are birthing babies up to 4 weeks later, they're going back and murdering the baby. No, it's insane, and blowing up all over them. And they know it. And they know that we've successfully gotten abortion on the ballots on several key battleground states. So this.
Federal abortion bill if it came across your desk.
Well, you don't need it.
You won't need it, but hypothetically, if it
Well,
did.
I don't want to answer a hypothetical. You don't need it.
Federal abortion bill if it came across your desk.
Well, you don't need it.
You won't need it, but hypothetically, if it
Well,
did.
I don't want to answer a hypothetical. You don't need.
I bet you don't want to answer that question. I bet you don't want to answer that question. Would you sign a national abortion bill? I don't want to answer that question. It's hypothetical. You don't need it. You don't need it. Bullshit. You've been trying to sell that bullshit for forever about the fact that, we're just going to let the states here. Bullshit. They're going to put a national abortion ban on your desk. And the answer would have been, if you weren't going to sign it, would be, no, I won't sign it because, if you really thought you weren't going to need it, no, I'm not going to sign that. We won't need it. Keep the federal government out of your business. No, he didn't say that. I don't want to answer that. I don't want to answer that question. I don't want to answer that. Yeah. They're lying out. They're losing, and they're lying out their butts as hard as they freaking can, because this is the kind of things that keeps happening. You got Donald Trump on one hand talking about, we're going to put tariffs on everything for everybody, and then trying like an idiot to say that we don't pay the tariffs foreign countries do. No, they don't. That's not how tariffs work. That's why tariffs are the nuclear weapons of trade wars. It's the last thing in the world you want to do because the radiation gets all over you. It's insane. We pay tariffs. When we put tariffs on somebody, it is the last thing you ever want to do in a trade negotiation, is get to the point where you're putting tariffs on goods, because you're taxing your own people. And dumbass keeps trying to say, well, no, foreign governments pay tariffs. No, they do not. No, they do not. You don't know what a tariff is, you dumbass. But yeah, this happens. Goldman Sachs came out and said, you know what? We've looked at the Trump plan, which is a disaster, and we've looked at the Kamala Harris plan, and you know what? Hers grows the GDP and means more jobs and means a better economy. Goldman Sachs is saying, hey, go Harris. Yeah, I mean, that's really happening, folks. That's really Goldman Sachs, of all people, have endorsed Kamala Harris and their policies. It is fantastic. It is fantastic. But, I'm really loving that the fever has broken. And my good friend Majid, y'all know him as Brooklyn Dad Defiant, one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. He is really a fantastic guy. He really is. Great post. The media spent 1,277 days from the time Biden was inaugurated until he withdrew from the race, focused on age and how old he was. Why don't they care about age anymore? Now that Trump is clearly far less capable, demented, weird old fart in the race. Folks, he's not campaigning because they can't let him talk. His brain is pudding, and they cannot let him talk. You want to know what they're arguing? This debate is not etched in stone. They're still arguing about this. They want their own candidate's microphone cut when he is not directly answering a question from a moderator. They want the network to turn off his microphone. Tell me you don't know your candidate is just gone, mentally incompetent. I mean, it happens to all of us, folks. It happens to all of us. I only have so long before this microphone before I start sounding like a blithering idiot. I only have so many years left. It happens to all of us. My brother once told me his mother-in-law, before she passed, was one of the most wonderful human beings on the face of the planet. She really was. I miss Marie. She really was. She was a wonderful human being. But by the time she passed, she had challenges. She just did. And my brother turned to me one day when something particularly embarrassing had happened, and I won't go into it because I love Marie to death. And he told me, Paul, you just need to know, you come in this world a baby and you go out a baby. That's just how it works. So yeah, Donald Trump has gotten to the point where he is mentally degraded. I'm not attacking old people. There are a lot of really sharp old people that haven't degraded in the slightest. Trump ain't one of them. Trump ain't one of them. He is just gone. Pudding for brains. They want to cut off his own microphone when he's not directly answering a question. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? And this is what I want to leave you with. This is the last thing that I want to leave you with. This was really good. This is really good. Let me pull it up for you. All right. This is Jeffrey Goldberg. He's the editor of Washington Week. Washington Week is one of those shows that most of you probably don't watch. You've got to really be a Politico to watch Washington Week. I recommend it, but again, politics really has to be your thing. And Jeffrey Goldberg does a really amazing job here.
I'll call it plainly, a double standard that we have in this campaign. We're sitting here parsing, as we should, what the Democratic nominee for president says in an interview, how she answers questions about a whole range of subjects. Meanwhile, this is what Donald Trump had to say this week.
Groceries, food has gone up at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We've never seen anything like it, 50, 60, 70%. You take a look at bacon and some of these products, and some people don't eat bacon anymore. And we are going to get the energy prices down. When we get energy down, this was caused by their horrible energy wind. They want wind all over the place. But when it doesn't blow, we have a little problem.
Here's the thing. I'll make this observation. I'll own it. If Kamala Harris went from bacon to wind in her interview with Dan and Bash, she would this morning not be, the next morning, she would not be the nominee of the Democratic Party. That would have been very, very strange. People would have been like, what is going on? Do we just have an absurdly low standard now for the things that Donald Trump says and does?
Yeah, we do. We do. But the fever is breaking. The fever is breaking. What Jeffrey Goldberg said is something we're starting to hear more and more and more out of different outlets, different segments, and even CNN. You're starting to hear some people talk about, why aren't we talking about Donald Trump and the crazy crap he's saying? And that is why Donald Trump has not campaigned. One of the reasons he has not campaigned. I think one, because they're trying to hoard money because they know they're going to lose. It's a grift. They've got to keep the pretext of a campaign up so that people will keep sending them money, but they don't want to spend that money on travel, on booking venues and whatnot. This is why he's only gone to, like, over the last week, he went to nothing but Sunset Town. If you don't know what a Sunset Town is, it is a town that is so dangerous and bigoted and biased that a person of color should not be caught on the streets after the sun goes down. These are the kind of towns that Donald Trump has been going to because it's the only place that he can actually get a full audience. And the venues are small and cheap. Yeah, these towns still exist. And Donald Trump, that's where he's been over the last week, been traveling to. Little towns that are just ridiculously small, that are bigoted little havens. Some of them have, KKK headquarters in them, things like that. But this week, nothing. Did they do anything for Labor Day? Nope. Traveling costs money. Venues cost money. Security costs money. All of it costs money. And they're not spending it. They're not. They're just not spending money. Because I really believe that he is hoarding this money so that when the election's over, he can send it to his committee and then they can spend it on his jet. They can spend it on damn near anything they want. As long as he doesn't say, you know what, I feel like I need 10 new suits. I want to buy me 10 new suits. You can't do that. But you can say, you know what, I'm going to do interviews because I'm going to run for election again. And I need suits. I need new suits. And he can go out and buy himself 10 new suits with that campaign money. And the FEC really does not follow this closely at all. So yeah, once he gets out of this, he can spend it on his legal defenses. He can spend it on his travel. He can spend it on food. All he has to do is claim, for whatever reason, it's for a campaign. And he gets to keep all that money. But they got to keep the pretext of a campaign up so that your crazy uncle will keep sending them money. But yeah, folks, that's what I had for you today. Thank you again to Jess Piper for being here. Amazing. Enjoyed that conversation so much. I hope you enjoyed it. You folks enjoy some Texas cities at night.